Hey, welcome to another episode of Strive 365, the podcast dedicated to helping you push through challenges and thrive every day, no matter the odds. We're here to help guide you to live a better life, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, or spiritually. I am your host, Justin Arnold, in the amazing RockVox studio here in Rochester, New York. Today, we have a very special guest. It's Dana Neiger. I just butchered her name. I apologize. Dana is an author, CHRO, Chief Human Resource Officer, and the co-founder of HIVE talent acquisition firm. She's passionate for helping individuals live better lives, and she's become a guiding light for those seeking personal growth and self-improvement. She's helped countless individuals navigate challenges, embrace change, and unlock their full potential. Her commitment to fostering positive company culture and her involvement in community and philanthropic initiatives have made her a respected figure in the field. Now, with that awesome introduction, why don't you add a little bit more to that, Dana? Glad to have you here.
Where do you begin? Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me, Justin. Nice to be here. And thank you so much for the very kind introduction. I appreciate you.
Yeah, it's all from our last meeting and just talking and just getting to know you and learn a little bit about you. And it's what I got from it. So there you go.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
For sure.
So a little bit more to add on there just to get the juices flowing, the creative juices, right?
Yeah.
So loving the intro. I'll add in that the book launched January of this year. Before I knew it, they were gone.
That's awesome. Where'd you guys launch the book through? Where do you get, where could people pick it up and stuff?
Yeah, that's a really great question and ask. So locally to the greater metro Atlanta area, there are some local small business bookstores. Read It Again Books in the Sewanee, Johns Creek area of Georgia is definitely housing it. Cheris in Decatur, Georgia is housing it. It's also online. You can find it at Target.com. You can find it at BarnesandNoble.com.
Yes.
Yeah, you can find it at, hate to say it, but the Amazon, right? That we don't want the small business owners knowing that, we do that, but that is available for those who are interested in that. Yeah,
I mean, when I launched my book, I was conflicted, but then I realized Amazon's is 90% of the marketplace. So it's all about helping more people, right? So we can fight the machine. It's also more, it's going to get a bigger reach to help more people. So
that is correct. Yeah. And the goal is to help as many people as possible realize that getting into therapy after whatever your trauma was is so necessary for your healing journey. So you're right.
Yeah. And that's how we connected too, because not that we have similar stories, but just the trauma factor and just how we're trying to find purpose through it, live through it. And that's why you ultimately wrote your book. So why don't we go down that road? Why don't you tell us a little bit about why you wrote the book and then even a glimpse of it for those that have not read it. Yeah,
absolutely. So it wasn't supposed to be a book. It was actually the close, a full circle to many, many years of therapy that I had been in to get over the passing of my entire immediate family. I unfortunately lost both my parents and my brother along the way in life, and I am orphaned now. And I'm sure anyone out there can imagine, even if they've lost one person, let alone their entire immediate family, what that could possibly do to you. So after many, many years of therapy and realizing that I do deserve love, that I do deserve all these things that I had sort of mentally put on the back burner or almost just compartmentalized and claimed that I didn't need or want in my life, right? Finally got to the point where I met a fantastic gentleman. We got married. We have a son. We built our own home, in Atlanta. And we are a thriving part of a seemingly thriving Jewish community, which is wonderful. But to get there, right? To get there and to be accepting of these things. And by the way, I'm not complete, still very much a broken person. I'll probably be in therapy for the rest of my life, but I'm okay with that now because I've started it and because the journey is different for everybody. So I wanted just something written, not necessarily a book, but a manuscript of some sort to fully close the circle or the loop or the gap or whatever you want to call it on that therapy. And what ended up happening is I was at a very busy point. I own HIVE talent acquisition firm, which is a human resources and recruiting consulting firm in Sandy Springs, Georgia. And we've been in business for 6 years. Shameless plug for us. I am the CHRO here, the Chief Human Resources Officer. My business partner, the lovely Veronica Jenkins, is our CEO. We are Black-owned, woman-owned, a DBE, and a government contractor. Super proud of all of those NAICS codes there. And I just was at a point in my life where work was getting really busy, but I really wanted to complete this project on this manuscript. And so I worked with a ghostwriter, and the ghostwriter and I became really good friends. Now we talk all the time and are involved in each other's lives, et cetera. But during that process, it took about 6 months. We worked together, we got it written, and I was done at that point. I was super excited. And she asked me, would you mind if I showed this to a publisher friend of mine just to get some professional advice? So I said, sure.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
One showed it to another, who showed it to another. And before I knew it, I had a few publishers coming to me saying, you need to get this book out there. This book will help people.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, well, it's not about me anymore. You know, I've done my thing. I did my full circle on this manuscript, and, you know, I've come to this conclusion in my therapy. Now, apparently, you have to get it out there so you can help other people.
Yeah.
And so it kind of accidentally became a book. And that was exciting.
Yeah. So there's some similarities there with us as far as like the deserve love, finding love, like receiving love. And, you know, I was always a big giver. So I totally understand that. I bet a lot of listeners who can relate to our stories can relate to that. And you found yours through therapy. And it seems writing, you didn't say it, but I got a question. And because I would say, you know, I went through things and for me, therapy it works for a lot of people, but just didn't seem to have the effects for me. But I started writing when I was in my teenage years, but I never considered myself a writer, nor could I write a book. And I found once I wrote that book, that was, again, an accident because it's this, you know, I went on a mission trip and a buddy encouraged me, and then it turned into probably the most therapeutic thing I ever did. And then the next step was reading it like 5 times, going through my emotional stages. So did you find it to be very therapeutic, the writing experience, and then the publishing?
Cathartic.
Oh, yeah.
Incredibly cathartic. Yeah. Absolutely. I can totally relate to what you're saying because there's so many feelings, all the feels, right? So many emotions, so many things that you go through. And like I said, I didn't even expect it to be a book. It was just supposed to be like a private, personal, I don't even know what you want to call it, just project, if you will, like personal pet project, whatever you want to call that, right?
Yeah.
And then it turned into this, and now it's out there and people are actually buying it. I even got my first royalties check last week.
Oh, isn't that the best? Yeah,
it's
great.
insane. Like, I don't even feel like I deserve to be paid for wanting this to get out there to help others. But at the same time, yeah, it's nice. Absolutely. It goes right back into what you've already invested into it, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I remember when I was going through the process, like I was told, oh, you'll never get rich off a book per se, maybe the things that come from it, but the book itself. And I was like, well, that's not the goal, right? Like that the goal was to help, you know, at least one person, which I could say that. And I'm sure you can say it. You said you sold out, I believe. Like, didn't you say something or something like that? You sold a bunch, right?
A couple of the first book events that I did, right, at bookstores and local bookstores and things like that, they sold out.
Congratulations. Good for you. Yeah. And if you guys haven't heard it, I don't even think you mentioned, why don't you mention the name of your book, the title? I don't know if we mentioned it yet.
Absolutely. So sorry. Yeah. Before I knew it, they were gone. A Jewish first-generation American woman's journey through the darkness. It's a long title.
No, well, it sounds like subtitle. Like my title is Purpose Through Pain, and then the subtitle is Finding Limitless Potential in the Presence of Adversity. So like it gives more to it. I love titles and subtitles. So no, I haven't read it, but I have checked it out, and I did the whole Amazon look through. So it's definitely something you guys should check out, especially if you can relate. And I know we actually have a large Jewish community here in Rochester, so definitely, like, for those that are listening, this would be a great read. So I'll try to make some connections there. But something else you said, you said you're still very much broken. I believe we all are. You know, I believe we're all. I like to consider it this, and I put it in my second book that we're all. There's a quote. I can't remember who it's by. I'm going to butcher it right now, but it's basically like we're all masterpieces, but a work in progress. You know, we're all perfectly imperfect in a way. Like, you know, as long as you're continually to work on yourself and improve every day and have self-awareness and what you are doing. So I don't need to tell you all that. And I just always want to remind people that are listening that, like, no matter how broken you feel, even people on what you may put on a, you know, pedestal or whatever, they're broken too in some way, and they're just working really hard and their work's in progress. So that's awesome. Anything else you'd like to share about the book?
It's very close to my heart because it is my memoir. And I love telling people at 43 years old, yes, I've actually a published author. I wrote my memoir, and they look at me like, you're so young. What are you talking about? And I'm like, you're right. Very young in number. However, quite a bit of life experience in these short 43 years, if you will, right?
Yeah,
Having lost all those family members.
You've had a lot of experience, and you have stories and everybody's got a story. And again, I've said this over and over again, just because it worked for me, it sounds like it worked for her. It doesn't mean you have to write a book, but find some kind of outlet. Could be painting, could be some form of art. I look at writing, it could be dancing, expression. Like, that's why like art and various forms of art form are such a good, they're a better release and a healthier release, right? Than, finding other vices. I'm not saying don't ever drink again, but I'm just saying these things are a way to actually cathartically and therapeutically like get through whatever you're dealing with, whatever that might be. And if you have more of them, if you write, dance, sing, and paint, more power to you. The more the merrier. But just if you're not doing any form, especially as we get older, we tend to look at those things as, I feel like I still play music with my kids from time to time. I grew up playing drums and being a percussionist and went to college and played. And I still do it because it's a therapeutic outlet. I feel better after it. So I always encourage people, maybe it's not writing, but find some kind of artistic, and artistic is your definition, right? So I put it in quotes with my hands. All right, let's shift gears. So you've obviously had a successful career. Sounds like a successful life, especially through the book and everything. Can you share some insight into how you've overcome challenges and maintained a thriving mindset, especially as your position with HIVE throughout your journey?
Sure, yeah. So the most important thing to constantly remember is empathy. Empathy plays such a huge part in anything that you do in life, right? You don't know what the person next to you on the train, you don't know what the person next to you in traffic, you don't know wherever you are. People are always going through shit, pardon my language. You really need to be aware of the fact that you're not the only one living in this world. And sometimes that self-awareness can really take you to the next level, to the point of success or failure in business, success or failure in relationships, right? In everything. So part of, I feel, the success of HIVE Talent Acquisition Firm, our HR consulting firm, is definitely managing and maintaining those relationships to the point where people not only know they can rely on you, but they respect you. They come to you. They think about you first amongst all others in that similar craft. I like to use the word craft a lot too, because I don't have a creative side as much as I wish that I actually did, as far as like artistic outlet, et cetera, except for the journaling and the writing and things like that. That's part creative. I do have. Yeah, it's a little bit creative. But like, I wouldn't be able to take a logo and be like, this is what you need for your logo. Right? That's different. Not my kind of creativity.
Like my producer, Scott, is creative and does amazing things here in this Rockbox studio here, but I can't do it. But I think he does it incredibly creative. And there's another shout out, but I didn't do that because he's like paying me or anything. But he's the best in town. And it's like, but I wouldn't consider myself an audio engineer, but man, what he's able to do. And I just look at all the wires here and I'm like, I don't even want to I'm not going to watch the YouTube video. I'd rather just pay somebody. Just like the contractors over at our house working on our kitchen right now. Like, people ask me, why don't you just do that yourself? I was like, that would take me a year of just watching YouTube videos and then another year of just sitting and then a year of getting yelled at by my wife because the kitchen's not done. So I'd rather just pay somebody in 6 weeks to do my kitchen and let their creative juices flow, So we have our areas.
And on that note, it's actually a perfect segue, Justin, to yielding to the experts, letting the subject matter experts do what they do best, right? And that's part of the other success of HIVE Talent Acquisition Firm is there were very few, when we founded in 2017, very few HR consulting firms in the greater metro Atlanta area that were doing what we did, let alone in the United States. We do work nationally. And so we've had the opportunity to get involved with a lot of different types of environments, but all over the country. And that is partly because there's a certain human aspect to human resources that has been missing for many, many years. We bring it back.
That's interesting you say there's a human aspect missing, but continue. Yeah.
That human aspect that's missing is literally picking up the phone or getting on a plane and reaching out to that client base, right? Our clients know who we are. Not just by, seeing our picture on LinkedIn, but because they actually recognize us. Like, I happen to have red hair right now that's like super trendy, but it's not my actual hair color. But for example, people will know that about me. Oh, Dana changed her hair, you didn't know? Or, oh, Dana's wearing this today, you haven't seen her yet. Like, they know what we look like because we interact with them and we make it a point to say, we're here for you. We're offering these services and we may or may not be local to you, but I'm going to get on Zoom and talk to you if you're in California and we've got a 3-hour time change, right? Or I'm going to get on whatever your platform of choice is, not just on the phone, not just text messages, and definitely not just via email. Communication, as far as those relationships, is so key.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, you mentioned at the beginning how you're women-owned, you're Black-owned, you're Jewish, the diversity there, and I would say that's unique as well, and just representation, how big it is, but also just being aware, like, for example, people that don't know me don't know my wife's Black, and having biracial kids, and it's given me a perspective that I never got to grow up in, things that I've learned, and just when you're in that environment that people may not understand, especially from HR, especially from hiring, especially in the climate like that. So talk a little bit about that, just having that as like who you are, having that opportunity, and just being out there for that population as well.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, our whole name and the whole reason we founded HIVE, we were founded on the DEI aspects that have become so wildly popular since the pandemic, but we were founded before the pandemic in 2017. Mm-hmm. My business partner and I, her being, identifying as Black, and also, honestly, I'm not outing her because everyone knows, but identifying as a lesbian as well, and married at one point, and they had a child together. I mean, regular family, right? Like to us, we don't see any difference there. It's just people living their lives, and we're a part of each other's lives. We are living, walking, breathing billboards for what we, air quotes, preach over here, right, at HIVE. And if you look at my LinkedIn profile, for example, people often comment, and whether they're positive, negative, or just sort of neutral in between, often comment on the fact that my rainbow flag is still up, on my LinkedIn profile picture all year round. And I said, well, yeah, because we support queer all year over here, for example, right? It's our fun little one-liner. Yeah,
I mean, I was just talking to my wife about this, like Black History Month. Yeah, it's a month, but like we should just love all year long, right? Like we should, it's whatever cause you support. It shouldn't be a 1 day, 1 month. I mean, you see it from people who support veterans to whatever you're passionate about your cause, but it just should be a 365-day thing of just caring about people, like no matter who they are. Right. And I love that.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I love what you just said there. That's such a great thing. So you kind of mentioned on COVID, did that affect you guys in any way, positively, negatively?
At first negatively, but then the outcome was quite positive. So like many small businesses and probably nonprofit arena people, we're not in the nonprofit, but I'm just trying to think of others that were probably vastly immediately affected by the pandemic shutdown, right? I would say that first week of March, we were like, oh, things are happening. By the second week of March, every single one of our government contracts had been unfortunately taken back by those government entities. And then by the third week of March, almost our entire business as far as HR consulting, which was at that time pre-pandemic, we were more 25% consulting, 75% recruiting as far as our business was concerned and the revenue coming in. And that recruiting part by that third week of March was completely gone, like zero work. Everyone had taken back everything that they wanted us to be working on because they didn't know what was going to happen. So we had to pivot fast. The current client base that we had needed us for these HR consulting reasons. They had no idea what was going on with PPP loans, et cetera, et cetera. So we did a 180 and really started marketing our needs immediately to our client base first to make sure that they understood, and word of mouth sort of started taking place where, just call HIVE. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Turned into a whole thing where we needed to start our marketing campaigns and make that pivot adjustment there as well, to the point where then we became 75% HR consulting and really only 25% talent. And that's actually been a nice switch for both of us. Yeah, from that perspective.
Yeah. And you briefly talk about it, but how'd you guys come up with the name HIVE, or where did it come from?
It's super cute, actually. Both my business partner and I, in various parts of our lives, were known as queen bees. I'm a queen bee to some Parisian cousins of mine, and she's queen bee with some of the various groups that she's in. And she, at the time, she may even still be using it. Sorry to out her again. My business partner is sort of allergic to life. We talk about her needing to be living in a bubble.
Just keep she's not here, so you got to bring her up, right? Yeah.
I know, but it's not bad things. I just, I feel like I'm telling her life story without her being here to laugh at it or at least approve. So I always get a little nervous about that. But she actually is the one who sort of came up with HIVE because she was using a honey body wash at the time. And I was like, you know what? That's a really great idea. And HIVE just sort of came together. It just made sense.
Hive is life. We need honey. We need the bees. We know, like, everything. Man, I was just reading a thing about like how almond milk is taken over and how that's affecting the bees and everything. And so not to get off topic, but it's just like they're an important part of life. So you're very important. It just makes me feel
so much better that I drink coconut milk and not almond milk. And like I've been telling people very, very passionately, but also trying to kind of not be that bitch, right? Like, oh, you shouldn't be using that, right? Like empathy wise.
Yeah.
But also letting people know you've got to be really careful with your almonds these days. And they just kind of look at me like I'm crazy.
So I'm in the coconut milk fam, not because I've been drinking coconut milk for years. So this is totally off subject, but it's very important to health. So it's striving. I started drinking coconut milk. I became lactose intolerant. And I really didn't like the taste of almond milk. And then it was actually bothering me. And then I realized a lot of nuts just bother me. And coconut milk is the only thing that I can drink that gives me a similarity to milk that doesn't bother me, and I just think it tastes better. So, and then I found out about the almonds, like Team Arnold over here already doing it. But and for those that have like any kind of like IBS gut issues and still want like some milk, I direct my clients to that because from a like inflammatory standpoint, it's probably one of the lowest outside of like. I'll be honest, like people are going to just drink water all day. Like it's just not realistic. So
obviously.
Giving
We've been
them
trying
an
to
alternative.
find new ways to make water exciting for years, right?
Yeah, they're trying to flavor it, but those sometimes can be worse than just that. And yeah, I get a non what do you call it? No sugar additive, like vanilla coconut milk, and I love it.
Sure.
So, yeah, that's my choice.
Like a little extract.
Yeah, I forget. I think it's So Coconut or whatever, the ones that make the yogurt and the ice cream. I think So Delicious. There you go.
So Delicious.
They do not promote this show. I probably have to say that.
Shameless plug.
But they're so good. That's what I drink.
Are we getting sued? I'm sorry.
I would totally have them as a sponsor for this show because they are so delicious.
See?
This segment is brought to you by So Delicious.
Indirectly by So Delicious. We love you, So Delicious. Please send us free samples.
There you go. And send it to all my guests. So you talk about on your website, and I'm sure you talk about it on your book because those are correlated as well. And just by looking around, you talk about just, thriving, especially through things and all aspects of life. So how do these areas intersect, and what advice do you have for, our listeners to achieve balance in areas from mentally, physically, emotionally, and those areas?
It's a good one. Okay, so I'm going to be real with everybody for a second, and I'm going to say I did not used to be like this, but I am an avid daily meditator and manifester. I used to not be like this, like I said, and actually when my mother was still alive and going through her own cancer battle, she stopped the chemo treatments, the radiation, all of the stuff that was chemical based, and decided to embark on her own type of mental treatment, which was literally spending 3, 4, sometimes even 5+ hours a day meditating by going inside her body to fight her own cancer. And as a angsty teenager, I honestly thought this was a total bunch of shit, a total bunch of crap. I was not really impressed with any of this until I saw the pictures. Okay. When she showed me the photo of the before and after of the tumor, she had me, because the before was obviously a very angry, large, scary looking type situation. And the after was mild and small and seemingly insignificant.
That's
in a
incredible.
Good way. Granted, she realized she wanted to live some life before losing life, and she didn't want to meditate that many hours a day. And so that was, in the end, the decision personally that she had to make, right? And so everyone makes their own decisions. But what I will say is meditation, from the perspective of even starting off blindly and not knowing what you're doing and just sort of feeling your way through, to, some sort of level of, and I'm not going to say that I believe or don't believe in it, I'm just going to say some sort of level of Doctor Strange-esque type, leaving your body, all of that sort of greater good. I think when you get to the point where you can actually find comfort in anything, it makes you feel better and it's not bad for you, right? So I'm not talking about vices like smoking, drinking, drugs, sex, self-sabotage, but certainly talking about the things that are positive for you. I do strongly believe that if you can find comfort in any of those things, then they're doing their part. They're doing what's right for you.
Yeah. And you're talking true comfort. Like we could say that people, I need a drink after a long day. You mentioned that, and they have more recently found, like we know, alcohol is a toxin. It actually can long-term affect your hormones and sleep cycles, and they've been finding this for years. But even more recently, like how it actually increases your stress level. So it's really not comforting you. And I'm not saying don't do it again. It's just because I have the occasional cocktail. So this isn't judgment. This is just fact. And finding true comfort. In fact, I talk a lot about, I did a podcast episode because I also wrote a chapter about finding comfort through discomfort because people, I don't know about your experience, but I didn't used to meditate for the longest time. In fact, it was very uncomfortable to quiet the mind, to calm. Like it was just, it just, for people that have experienced trauma and different types of, like, especially childhood pain and things like that I've experienced and potentially you've experienced, it's hard because you want to, you don't realize it, but subconsciously when you're still working through things, it's like you want a busy mind, you want to stay active, you always want to do stuff. So that was hard, but I'm with you. And in fact, I know it's funny that this topic comes up pretty regularly on here for the people that are striving in like all aspects of their life, but are still, of course, works in progress, is they find daily meditation. And for those that don't meditate, who I used to think it was like hippie stuff, but I realize it's so beneficial. I do it multiple times a day. And I tell people that don't, if you meditate regularly, and there's a saying goes, it's like, then you probably just need 5 to 10 minutes a day. If you never meditate, you need to meditate at least an hour. Like just to tell you like how important it is, you need it. Like those that avoid it. And it looks different for everybody. For me, I do it usually, like I do it in a cold tub in the morning. So sometimes I need like stimulation. I've got like an acupuncture mat that I lay on sometimes. So sometimes it's something like that. If you need to listen to binaural beats, but I just always encourage people to find it because you said it right there. It gives you like true comfort, to be able to, and it's so simple. And that's what I tell people in the health, like that aren't in the health sector like me, like the things that people need to be doing are actually really so simple. We've gotten away from it. They're like the simple, get out in nature, play, move, breathe, meditate, and, eat real food. If you can, have a little farm or garden, if it's within your capacity or even something of that nature, because the closest to the realest thing, you're going to be better mentally and physically. Anything else on the mental, spiritual, physical health side that you're doing to just thrive or encourage people to do?
It's very challenging, but I try to read energy around me as best as possible. And I'm really not that good at it. And it's a separate form. So I know we just talked about the meditation. Everything is energy, right? But we're all made up of electromagnetic or whatever it's, we've got energy flowing all around us. The force, if you want to call it that, right?
The force.
From the perspective. And certainly not trying to get religious or say that anyone does it more or better than anyone else. I think all of us have the capacity. It's being self-aware, right? So just as we were talking about before with needing a drink or wanting to smoke or whatever the case may be, no judgments. If you want, whatever those things, fine. But don't utilize them from the perspective of not understanding that they are filling a space. They are going to not fill that space. You will remain the empty hole in that particular thing that you're trying to fill with said vices, right? So instead of allowing them to be the thing that gives you comfort, utilize them being self-aware by saying, I know this cig isn't going to do it for me, but I just need it in this moment and I will be better in a second from other things, right? And that's fine. The self-awareness is the most important first step, in my opinion. And I used to do the same thing. And I talk about self-sabotage a lot in the book. Filling space and filling time because I didn't, like you and you said so eloquently earlier, Justin, I don't want to be alone with my thoughts. I don't want to be alone with, whatever. Getting comfortable with that can take a really long time, depending on what that trauma that you suffered or traumas that you've suffered are or were. Once you get to the point where you can get more comfortable with that, and it could be various things that could get you to that point, drinking, drugs, hallucinogenics, whatever the case may be. Again, no judgments, but once you get to that point, you won't need those things anymore to feel comfort because you will be filling that space with something more meaningful than you could ever imagine.
Yeah, and that's health. And if people did that, who knows? Like I've known people that have done that. They were like on different kinds like antidepressants and medication, and they were having different side effects. And then they switched over to just meditation. It was a hard battle, but they're either these are clients that I've had that have either gotten completely off, which is amazing, or just even decreased the amount which is another cool thing. And it just shows like, it's not always, I can't say that's going to happen with everybody, but just it's worth a try, right? Because it's free. And I like what you said there about it. It's, these things aren't filling space. So it's just things about like, what are you filling your space with? And I love your position. Like we already introduced who you are and what you do. And so for somebody like her to be talking about this, this will, have an effect, mentally, emotionally, but not just personally, professionally. Like think of if you just, during your workday, like my wife went from working in the news to being in the corporate world, and it's a go now. She's not used to, like, she realized she did have some downtime, even though the hours, her words, not mine, sucked in the news, getting up at like 4 a.m. and working weird hours and working, in those time zones. But now, she works a normal, 8 to 4 or 9 to 5 type thing, but she's on call and there's like call after call after call. So sometimes she doesn't get a break for lunch. And so she has to find that downtime, and she sees, and we've had conversations like this, she sees why people in the corporate world can revert to vices and things of that sort. She just, she'll have a cocktail on the weekends and, occasionally, but it's just, she's realized she's needed this downtime because she really said she would go crazy. And so she's grateful for it and thankful. So I'm just sharing that too for somebody that's in that world that I'm witnessing. So speaking of career, and the people you work with, can you share some success stories from your career, or where you've seen individuals push through challenges and come out stronger on the other end?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I talk a lot, and my business partner and I consult a lot with woman-owned, female-owned businesses, especially in the greater metro Atlanta area. A lot of them are Black female-owned businesses, right? I mean, Black female entrepreneurship is really, truly the foundation of Atlanta culture. Awesome. And so that was one of the reasons why we felt so strongly about making sure that we reached out to other companies that were similarly what's the word I'm looking for? Similarly labeled as we are, right? That they see themselves as woman-owned specifically, or Black-owned, woman-owned specifically, or a DBE, disadvantaged business entity, for example, right? And wanting to explore that and turning it into the fact that all of us have very similar positive and negative and learning curves for what we've done. I mean, I will say watching a Black-owned, woman-owned business go from $100,000 in revenue in their first year to $1 million company under our, I don't want to say tutelage, right? But it under our support system of making sure that they had a back office and the appropriate tools necessary for their, advancement and their success. Man, that right rewarding. There is why we got into the business.
I bet. That's pretty cool. So I assume, I know there's a lot of leaders that listen to this podcast and you deal with them. So what are some essential qualities or habits that effective leaders possess? How can an individual cultivate these traits in their own lives?
Yeah. So what we're pushing a lot these days in the same family of the empathy side is empathetic leadership. There's a difference between the stick and carrot mentality, right? Here's my stick with my carrot on it, and if everybody follows and does what I say, you'll get this reward, which is a total bunch of bullshit. We would prefer the more trust and inspire.
Tell me how you really feel.
Yeah, I just did, right? I was very brutally honest there from that perspective, because this is the true difference. Is everyone knows you can read as many books as you want. You can have some old white dude tell you, right, what this means to you. But the reality of it is, I'm a semi-young Jewish woman with a, Black business partner who happens to be a lesbian working in Atlanta, and we're kicking butt and taking names. You want to talk to us? Great. You don't want to talk to us? That's also fine, right? But we will tell you, no longer are the stick and carrot leadership days. That is a boss barking orders from on high, right? You have to come into a room with your team and you have to say, what's important to you today? Okay, great. You're going to lead that. And I want to be here to support you. Tell me what you need, how many people you need on that, et cetera, et cetera. Put it out there, support it, and naturally allow your leadership to rise to the top as is. Not everybody's meant to be a leader. So the ones who stand out are going to be the ones that you're going to help cultivate. The ones who maybe aren't sure yet, you're going to continue to employ, develop them to make sure they're getting what they need, so on and so forth. And this is not new, but it certainly is considered the newest way of doing things, if you will, in this day and age, right? As far as business is concerned, as far as leadership is concerned. And there's a huge difference, again, between being a boss and being a leader. A boss will bark orders from on high, as I said, will stand and make other people feel insignificant and inadequate, right? Just to get what they want done, right? Whereas a leader will make sure that they understand that they're not perfect and that they make mistakes. I am not winning any parenting awards in my personal life. For example, my son ate a cupcake for dinner last night. Fuck it. Like, what am I going to do? You know, it was his birthday weekend. I mean, he's not having one tonight, right? But his birthday was Saturday. So I'm not going to argue. That's one less argument. Have your cupcake for dinner, right? Like, whatever.
Yeah, it's the cupcake every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner that we need to like talk about. But if it's like,
and we have to have a little discussion. That's
yeah.
Right.
If he's sneaking cupcakes into his room, we're like, hey, I'm going to go to the store after, and he's bringing home like a 12 pack. Like, we have to have a conversation. But yeah, it's like, what?
A conversation about how diabetes works.
Whatever. Like, it's your household. Yeah, your approach. I like that. I don't know if I've heard the sticking care, but obviously I know what you're talking about, and everybody does that. You're talking about the I think it was the last guy I just had, or recently, the one I just posted. I talked to a business owner, and he referred to, if you take care of your people, how they'll take care of you. And he worked for people that were like sticking care. He owns a local chimney cleaning building, like it's a chimney company, and it's pretty cool. But he's worked for a lot of different contractors, and when he got into it, he was just, a lot of people told him, you're not gonna be able to do this, you're not gonna be able to do that, and just how it was like a stick and carrot mentality. He was a boss. And he just realized, because he'd been through a lot, he'd been through addiction. I met him because I was his coach, trainer, and everything, because he'd fallen off a roof and he was wheelchair bound and thought he was going to be there for life. He's not, but he's gotten out of it. Yeah. And when he did that, he lost his job. He was like losing everything. And now he runs like a multi-million-dollar business, all because he used like his adversity and the things against him, and just what he learned from bad bosses, essentially, and turned it into like being a good boss. And he realized, just, man, if I take care of my people, take care of my clients, it's still work. It's still not easy, but it's easier, and it's easier to deal with daily because they can have real communication, conversation. And you didn't say it quite like that, but it sounds like essentially similar in the way of just, how you treat your people, being a leader, being a developer, like providing tools, right? What would that be? Whether it be continuing education and things like that. Anything else you want to share on that?
I mean, I would say the stick and carrot thing is also identified by command and control, right? And when you have controlling and overly controlling leaders, there's a problem there. When you have people who don't understand delegation, and the fact that being a good delegator of work is also part of employee development, it helps build character. It helps build natural leadership. It helps people to understand what it looks like to progress. And you're giving people small wins along the way, which makes people feel so damn good, right? Like, that is great leadership.
Yeah, and so you already mentioned some, but what are some other ways organizations can create a positive and supportive culture that enables their employees to thrive personally?
You hire a high talent acquisition firm to come in and assess your current culture.
Promotion, but yeah, you guys, I already talked about it. So yeah, there you go. She can help you out. So your experience as a talent acquisition gives you any insight into career development. What advice do you have for individuals looking to make meaningful progress in their professional lives, especially during challenging times, career transitions?
Yeah. So it's a tough time. It's a tough time in so many different industries and arenas right now, right? I'm not even going to sugarcoat that. But what I'm going to say to everybody is, if you don't have the capacity to reach out to us, you can find some other recruiter that you can develop a relationship with, right? Or some other agency that you can develop a relationship with. And you've got to make sure of several things. They understand and know your worth and value walking in the door, right? That is far more important. If somebody's in there trying to tell you, oh, well, I see that you're asking for 75,000 or 175,000 or 575,000, but you need to understand this isn't going to happen. That's not somebody you want to work with. You want somebody who's going to feed those opportunities and feed those goals for you, right? Now, I admit that I do help people understand what the Atlanta market or whatever market we're working in, the trends are, right? But that doesn't mean that they're right. Right. And so this day and age, for example, Atlanta and the Southeast in general, as far as a region of the United States of America, used to be a little less expensive than it currently is. I mean, right now you can't come to Atlanta and find a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment for under $1,800, which seems pretty normal for someone in New York and probably someone in California, but not so much here in the South. It's kind of new in the last literally 2 or 3 years that this has happened. And what is happening there? A smart HR and talent person would say, well, clearly it's not just inflation. Clearly the times they are changing. And so getting the word out in a particular city that's having a transition as far as quality and quantity of work-life balance and inflationary periods in time, now you've got to start telling people, including my clients or people who want to work with HIVE, they need to understand if you're not offering bare minimum $60,000 salary, it's not a livable wage in your city, right? And we have people who come to us all day, every day trying to work with us. Well, we're offering commission only. And I'm like, well, we can't work with you, because I can't sell that to anyone, because nobody in this day and age is going to take a commission only opportunity. And I'm sorry to say that so generalistically. Obviously, there are people out there, but you want to find somebody who's going to stay in that role. And I'm telling you, I'm not going to be able to find anybody who's going to be interested in that opportunity, right? I know my market.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, I would assume commission would maybe be like small business, or, maybe it's a salary plus commission. But yeah, like I totally get it, because, people, especially like you said, in the climate and what they're needing, just especially if they got kids or whatever their life looks like at that point. I was just still stuck on, like, I was thinking when I lived in Kentucky, I had a nice condo for like $800 a month. If I had that same place here where I live in Rochester, it'd be like 3 times as much. It's just,
exactly.
I was thinking about what you said. I was like, because I get what you're saying. I've lived in Kentucky, I've lived in Illinois, and I've lived here in New York. I will say there is a difference, though. I don't know about Atlanta. I've been in Atlanta several times. It's a beautiful city, so they might be the exception to the rule. But I remember in Kentucky, even in Lexington, where I live, which is a bigger area, like everything might have been cheaper. But you know what else? The roads sucked, traffic sucked. There's a lot of like give and take. Like there wasn't much to do either. Like here, it's like taxes are higher, but we've got a lot in the roads, except for our winters. And Scott's probably like, wait, what about April, May? Our roads get pretty bad. But anywho, so you talked a lot of professionally, like you've offered a lot of valuable tips professionally and the things that you guys do. And you even offered some things that you do personally. Do you guys, or ladies, sorry, I apologize. Do you ladies like help people while helping them on a professional level? Do you help them on the personal level at all, especially like with your book and everything?
That's a good question. So I definitely don't tout the book when I'm dealing with individuals. Okay. If they ask me about it, yes. But yeah, I definitely don't tout the book. Because to me, it's a personal experience, right? If you're coming to me and you want advice on a resume and you don't know me from Eve and I start coming at you with my book, that seems awfully salesy and then becomes maybe a little too impersonal for that person. Like that's not what I'm here to talk to you about, right? But I am a big relationship developer / maintainer. Right? I develop the relationship. I continue to develop it in order to maintain it for a long period of time. There are very few people in my over 11,000 connections, for example, on LinkedIn, that I couldn't actually personally introduce you to. Yeah. And yes, that is a lot of hard work. But part of that also is the fact that relationships matter to me. They always have and they always will. And I'm not saying, and there's no judgment on people who have even more connections than I do, who don't necessarily know all of their connections. No judgment. Just simply stating, if it really matters to you, then you're going to make that happen, right? That's anything in life. Like, let's be honest, right? So if it really matters to you to get to know people, to understand them, and to truly help them, sometimes just pushing the book on them isn't the way to help them.
No, yeah. I mean, sometimes just having conversation. I heard somebody say he's a public speaker, and that's a avenue that I'm looking to grow in my life. But he said he was asked, or what are you thinking about? Or the person before he was going on stage, somebody asked him, "What are you thinking about? Are you thinking about your speech? What's going on in your mind right now before you step on?" And he said, "I'm thinking about the people." It's like, what? I'm thinking about the people out there. It's like, I have nothing I can work on 5 minutes before I go on stage, but it's all about the people. How can I help the people? How can I serve the people? How can I love the people? And and you touched on that. And I just believe that's super important. And it goes back to what I just said, when you take care of your people and same thing, like at the end of the day, like what are you offering? What are these companies offering to take care of their people? Or what are the people that you're working with offering to help improve? Because it needs to be a symbiotic relationship. It sounds like, where we're all mutually benefiting and helping and growing together. So I'm curious. I think I saw some, but I want to ask if you do, and what do you guys do? Do you guys do anything philanthropic for the community? Yeah,
we sure do.
I thought you did, so I wanted to bring that up because that's super important too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So pre-pandemic, and then obviously not during the pandemic, but then after the pandemic, we were considered a little more free to be able to do that. So we partner with CHOA, which is Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, right? So children's healthcare is everywhere. I think that's the main umbrella. And then the Atlanta mark, we do a lot with them over the holidays where we go in, we volunteer with the children's wards, whether they are, I honestly don't even know what the correct term is to say here, but different levels of trauma, right?
Yeah.
And working with those particular children on arts and crafts, right? Just having an opportunity, just sitting in the arts and crafts area, and then the kids will come down and they know that we're there and we interact with them, or we don't interact, or whatever the case may be, whatever it is they want, just providing opportunities there. I am also personally very active in the Atlanta community from the perspective of my temple. I am actually, as of June 1st, officially co-president of my temple in Temple Emmanuel in Sandy Springs.
There you go.
And so our 3 initiatives this year are social justice specific to anti-Semitism and education around Judaism in general and anti-Semitism. And so that is one of the ways that I'm trying to give back to my community as best as possible, not just the Jewish community, because I know I said anti-Semitism, but everyone, because hate, no matter who is being hated on, is an everyone problem, right? If they're hating on Jews, they're coming after, African Americans, they're coming after Asians, they're coming after LGBTQ+, they're coming after every marginalized people you can imagine. So we might as well all bridge together to make sure that we don't have to deal with that alone.
So I'm part of this organization. So I live in a town called Irondequoit, which is basically right outside Rochester. It's all Rochester, and so I'm part of this community, this organization called One Irondequoit. It's part of our town supervisor created it, and he asked me to be on this board. He's got representation of pretty much everything. And even when he wasn't sure, he's like, "What else do I need to represent Irondequoit to represent?" So LGBTQ, black, white, all a little bit of everything in school. There's about, I want to say, a dozen or so of us. Anyways, there's things that we do, but there's also, we have presentations once a month where somebody comes in. And 3 months ago, we had a woman from, I forget the name of the organization, but it's basically a local Jewish organization here in Rochester. And she actually said they're trying to get away. Have you heard this? They're trying to get away with the word anti-Semitism. Have you heard this? She was talking about,
and they're using the phrasing Jewish hate or Jew hate.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I just want to bring that up because I want people to be aware that is starting to. And when she said it made sense right away before she explained it, and then she explained it. But do you want to explain that just for those that have never heard this? I would love for you to do that.
I would love you to start, and then I can fill in the blanks if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so it's just getting around the idea. What she was talking about was, well, I remember she talked about like where the word came from, and that was part of it. And then she was just talking. Yeah. Have you heard that part? I don't remember. Man, I feel so horrible, but I remember exactly why. I took notes and I don't have them in front of me, but I didn't know this was. I should have thought that this would have come up. But it's like, why didn't I think this was going to come up? But it was just, because it makes more sense too. Because let's tell it what it is. If anything, let's just tell it what it is. It's hateful rhetoric, words, propaganda, whatever it is, against the Jewish community. But there was some definition to Semitism where it came from, that they wanted to get away from that, and it just, we can identify it, like we could black hate or gay hate or whatever it might be, just that it's hateful rhetoric or posters or whatever it might be is essentially what she was expressing. Yeah. There's just, So.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So the interesting thing about moving away from anti-Semitism is also very difficult to define. And one of the things that is a huge struggle in the United States as a whole right now, and granted, there is a new definition, it has just not yet been accepted by a few lingering states, and unfortunately Georgia is one of those. But we are hoping that this new anti-Semitism definition this bill will pass in Georgia soon.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like I said, it's passed in quite a few other states, and some that may potentially surprise others that have beaten others as far as that. But in reality, what it is a true definition to fully understand the hate coming from whoever it's coming from, how it is said, how it is expressed. And so that collegiate and university institutions of the states can be sure to prevent their Jewish students from feeling so isolated and so compounded with these feelings, right? There's a lot of anti-Semitism and a lot of Jewish hate on campuses all over the country, let alone all over the world right now. But some of these states have adapted this new definition specifically so that these students can feel safer, which is hugely helpful. In the places, for example, like Georgia, where they have not yet adopted it, things like on May 14th, which was Mother's Day, Emory University, I'm going to get in so much trouble for this, Emory University had a Palestinian students and Black students organizational discussion that they put together that was basically veiled Jewish hate. The second sentence, the keynote speaker, who is a very, very well-known tenured professor with Harvard with 5 degrees, 2 of them, I think, being in law, her second sentence, and I quote, was, "Jews are responsible for Palestinian deaths." And so that really shocked me to hear something like that completely out loud. And the people I was sitting with, as I literally was about to stand up and go, no, right? Sit down, Dana, there's more. Trust me, you want to hear all of this, right? And we were there for hours, choosing to be there for hours on Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to us, to identify that this was, in fact, a veiled sort of anti-Semitic issue. And Emory, as you may or may not know, actually a ton of Jewish students from the greater New York and Northeast come down and are students at Emory. So that was very interesting.
Yeah. So I looked something up, and I if I remember now what she said, it was actually like a racial term or something like that. Mm. And there was a pamphlet. So this thing that I looked up, it talked about an 1879 pamphlet by a German publicist, The Way to Victory of Germanism Over Judaism. And he used the term, and then it became very popular during that. And and he even apologized for it. But yeah, it was originally also used in 1781 to define the language related to the Hebrews. And so it had like a little bit of racial tone to it. So that's why I believe the history of it actually, I'm not comparing it to, but I think she said something it's like by comparing it to a racial black term, even though it might define it, but that's part of the reason it has hate kind of mixed it, the history of it anyways, the history of it. It doesn't actually mean it, but the history of it has hate in it. And I think that was, if I'm correct, now that I remember what she was saying. Well, as we get near here to the end, so is there anything I got to ask this question? What are you guys working on? Is there anything that oh wait, there was one thing you talked about arts and crafts, and there was something cool about that you guys are doing with that's so important. In fact, there's a statistic about how they're starting to introduce arts and crafts into certain penitentiaries and prisons and things. And they're having huge success on inmates on like less, I don't want to say this, better behavior, and also early release and less return to prison. Just by doing more, because they're finding the reason why they started doing that is because they started finding a lot of the creativeness and a lot of criminals in our today's prison just didn't have a creative outlet growing up. And so they weren't able to release it. And there's some studies that have showed when you don't have the ability to release your creativity, you release it in other ways, crying, things of that sort. So I think that's great that you're doing that. But I wanted to mention that because it's so important what you're doing. And I love that you're doing that. So I just wanted to applaud you and bring that up. So what are some of the goals that you guys are working towards aspiration, whether it be you or what do you guys got in plans, or whether it be HIVE in the near future?
Yeah, HIVE is steady. We did start a new division last year. I think it was last year, might even be 2 years now. I don't even know where we are. The pandemic has really done that to everyone.
Right? Yeah.
Years. Yeah, it's just sort of like they disappear. So I apologize for that. But I think 2 years now, we've had a new division within HIVE that is sort of an entertainment arena. And funny enough, people are probably going, there's no human resources in the entertainment arena. And you're right. So that's why we are trying very hard to break into it and express a lot of the things in there with the Me Too movement, having done what it is doing still currently, thank goodness. There's just a lot of room for policy and procedure to be put in place in various ways in the entertainment and music industries, as far as labels, as far as incubator projects are concerned. So that's been very exciting there and a huge breakthrough. Personally, I would like to say that because of the book and sort of around the book, a speaking circuit has sort of taken off, and
Awesome.
I am booked through 2024. Thank you. Thank you
That's
very much.
awesome. Congratulations.
With openings, of course. So if anybody wants me or needs me to speak, we will make it happen. But it's been very awesome. And I'll shamelessly plug my alma mater, Agnes Scott College, the private women's college in Decatur, Georgia, and state that as soon as they found out that I had published my book, they were coming to me and wanting to know, great, what are we doing? What are we housing?
That's
like,
great.
what speaking engagements do you need from us? Right. Which sort of then has flown into other opportunities. And specifically, like talk about really specific, I'm speaking around the country to various women's collegiate athletic teams of various levels and divisions. So division 1, 2, and 3. I happen to play 3 sports at Agnes Scott while I was there: soccer, basketball, and softball. But that was division 3, but nevertheless, still amazing.
Man, anybody that plays sports in college is great. Yeah. Who cares what division it is?
Yeah.
If you go to college and play a sport, like I played soccer too, but you're incredible. So that's awesome.
You're sweet. Thank you. You're incredible. Thank you. But I think one of the things that we're sort of relaying and relating on is people, not just women. It has sort of turned into more of a female thing for me as far as the people who are attending, but people at the collegiate level and also involved in sports of all the genders are not well. They're just not well right now. There's a huge mental health just deficiency these days from everything that everyone is going through. And I think that's why the speaking circuit is taking off, is we can relate to each other. It is very challenging in life when you've lost a parent or a sibling or your entire family or whoever, whatever you've been through, to identify with others who haven't. And I do talk about that in my book, and I bet you too can relate to that as well.
Yeah, I mean, your story's different, but mine was, I've got lists, but I mean, mine starts as early as 5 and 6, and childhood abuse and trauma and, a house fire, and like boom, 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 all the way up through 10, just like, and then the one thing and what I've always been able to do is navigate. Like, I've gone through my stuff, but it's just like the reason I was able to write it, because I've always overcome adversity, and I didn't realize I was doing it. It just seemed like that was, I want to live. Like, I decided that I wanted to live, that like suicide, even though I contemplated it in moments, it wasn't a choice. It's not a choice I wanted to go down to. And I have a quote in my book, and I even have it tattooed on my leg that, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but essentially that, we're all here for a reason, and the world is better with you here. It really is. You just got to find it. If you need help, there's always somebody.
Okay. I'm not crying. You're crying.
It is. We just, and I looked at it the other day as I was dealing with some challenges, but everything now is so minor. But we're all here for a purpose, and I've always been able to find joy. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean like I'm like smiling when I'm getting beat up or beat down. It just means I'm able to navigate, mindfulness, and eventually find joy and differentiate what joy and happiness is. So that's essentially what my second book is, like how to find joy through storms of our life. That's not the title, but that's essentially what I'm getting through on this next one. The first one was purpose. The next was how do we maintain joy and the importance of it. But that you have to, because there's people out there hurting, especially now more than ever, especially post COVID. So I love that you're doing that. And we've talked a lot. So just one more question: is there anything else that you haven't mentioned? For the viewers, since it is Strive 365 and we aim to inspire and guide listeners to live a better life, is there any other practical steps, mindset shifts, or anything else that you'd love to mention on, whether it be personally or professionally, to help people strive every day?
Just be kind. Kindness really does matter, right? In that moment where you could mouth off to someone, or you could say something mean, or you could roll your eyes, or whatever the case may be, just don't. It'll make you even stronger than you already are. I mean, Justin, you and I have that in common. I can tell the way that we've been talking, our former communications, et cetera. You and I clearly just handle things a little differently than other people do. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? In my own family, because we lost my dad and then my mom before I lost my brother. My brother lost both his parents same time I did, but we were different ages and we were totally different people. We handled it very differently. And it's okay. You have to know that it's okay.
Yeah, it's going to be okay. It's funny. I didn't even realize what shirt I was wearing, and we talked a lot about it, but it actually, I don't know if you saw it. It says no fear in love. And I just think that's very important. And if we can be kind and if we can love, and it's something I teach my kids every day, like, you'll never win an argument, like a true fight argument. Everyone loses. Right. Like when it's like a screaming match. But you can have a better effect when you're kind. If you have to choose between kindness or winning an argument, choose kindness, because again, you'll never win that argument is how I look at when the argument gets heated. And we're talking unhealthy arguments is what I'm talking about.
Unhealthy arguments. No, I assume.
Because there are good, like me and my wife have arguments, but they're constructive and there's feedback and we got to know the difference. But I'm talking about like when they're like screaming, yelling, actual fist fighting, cursing at each other, like there might be some at the end, but you'll navigate in and around when you can be kind, even when you're arguing, which I think you can.
That's correct.
So, yeah.
Not saying that one thing is going to set somebody off, right? That's a pressure point for them or a total pet peeve or whatever. I mean, we all know that we push each other's buttons because it's human nature. It's what we do. But if you can hold back, you're stronger for it.
Yeah,
right?
And when you feel backed in the corner, the first reaction is like, you want to, So you got to remember you're not. So one thing I've done with that, here's my tip, is just know that you're never backed into a corner. You can always navigate it and around and through. And sometimes the best way to navigating is, kindness, which is so hard, but it makes things easier in the long run. It's hard initially. But I remember when I've made the back in the corner, how much longer it takes for me to work challenges through the most loved people in my life. It's like, and I'm beating myself up because I'm like, dang it, if I would have just been kind, I probably could have won, essentially, not won, but you know what I mean? Like I could have navigated this a lot better, but now I've got to take days and spend money on flowers. It cost me more money and time because I was stupid in 2 seconds. So anyways, with that note, thank you for coming on here. It's been a real pleasure. This has been it went in a direction that I didn't know it was going to go, and I really enjoyed it. This was really cool. This is beneficial to the employer, to the employee, to the human being. There was a lot of benefit here, and I really thank you for coming on here today. So thanks again, and for anyone listening, make sure you like, share, and subscribe because we already know there's tons of people that can benefit by just that free little click that you can do with this podcast. So thank you for tuning into another episode of Strive 365. Take care.